Before we start this video, I'd just like to tell you and wholeheartedly confirm that there is 0 leaks in this video. We're discussing the situation around The Last of Us and the leaks that have come out over the last few days, but we don't know them. We haven't seen them. We've purposely stayed away from them, and we're going to discuss them about the morality, what's happening, what hasn't happened for those of you who haven't caught up with it, and we're just going to chat through it, right, Henry?
Yep, that's what we're going to try to do. It's going to be as spoiler-free as possible because neither of us have looked into the leaks, but we can't say the same for the comment section. All of the spoilers I've seen have just been people on non-Last of Us related things just being like, boom, here's a major plot point, and that's it. So be aware if you're going down to comment, we have no control over that.
Yeah, we've got no control of comments, but we can guarantee there's no spoilers in this video. So feel free to watch it through. You won't be spoiled anything. Because, for those of you who haven't heard already, there's been a huge spoiler. Someone has come out and just leaked loads and loads of stuff about The Last of Us Part 2. And there's been some developments with the release date and such like. So, Henry, why don't you just run it down for us?
So, the leak itself is... Some people are saying it's the whole game, and it's not technically, but it's the skeleton of it. It's the script, a load of cutscenes, a whole load of gameplay, and then more kind of technical things like level selects and menus and that sort of stuff, and they all give away their own little secret details. But again, we're not here to elaborate on any of that specifically because we're not looking into it, because we're not assholes who are just going to sift through spoilers and ruin everyone's day.
Well, not just that, right? The reason I don't want to look into it, because, you know, we run this gaming news channel on that, right? And we could easily give you the information, but I don't want to spoil it for myself. No. I literally want to play the game and experience it the way that the creators intended me to experience it. I don't want to ruin that shit for myself. Why would I want to do that? That's why I'm sticking away. Not just for everyone else's benefit, but for my own too. Some
people who have looked into these spoilers have opinions about them, and opinions that inform their purchasing decisions. So there's a whole lot of stuff there. It's the elephant in the room that we're going to try really, really hard not to talk about. But the newest information that came out late last night after the first leaks came out, and then everyone's YouTube videos went up because we didn't do one yesterday because I was being ill. The release date has now been changed. And it's clearly a knee-jerk response to the leak from Sony. They've been like, okay, we need to do something. June 19th. Have it on June 19th. So there you go. Last of Us Part 2 is officially coming, unless there's another delay, on June the 19th.
Well, at least we can say we got the release date out of these leaks.
I mean, that's the only win, yeah. I mean, that's my mum's birthday, and I'm sure she won't care, but...
Yeah, happy birthday, early to Mrs. Henry Cooper Sr.
So, as well as The Last of Us getting a release date, Ghost of Tsushima has had a slight delay, and that's mainly because of The Last of Us thing taking that spot. And there were rumours about it in the past that Ghost of Tsushima was going to move out of the way and Last of Us was going to take that exact spot, but Ghost of Tsushima is only a couple weeks back. It's now July the 17th as opposed to June the 26th, I think it was, somewhere around there. So it's not a huge delay, but that's mainly just to give it room. It's nothing to indicate a problem at Sucker Punch.
I mean, bottom line is that June, July is going to be a good month if you're on a PlayStation.
With regard to the leak, Naughty Dog quite quickly came out with a statement. A lot of people are like, how have they not said anything yet? But it's like, dude, the leaks have just happened. It takes time for them to figure out what they're doing and get PR people to say this short sort of shit. These things take a little bit of time. It's bureaucracy and all that crap. So on Twitter, they shared a statement which says, "We know the last few days have been incredibly difficult for you. It's disappointing to see the release and sharing of pre-release footage from development. Do your best to avoid spoilers, and we ask that you don't spoil it for others. The Last of Us 2 will be in your hands soon. No matter what you see and hear, the final experience will be worth it." That's not denying any of the leaks. So basically all of the leaks that are out are true. So if you want to avoid them, do what you can.
Yeah.
And just try not to do it for ruin it for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Last few days have been incredibly difficult for you.
That's a bit come on.
Is it? Is it that difficult? It's difficult for you, as Naughty Dog. It's difficult for your studio and your company and your ambitions with the game, and not so difficult for us. Yeah. I mean, maybe if you have been spoiled and your heart's broken, maybe it's a little bit difficult. But
yeah, that was the first thing I thought when I read this statement. I was like, incredibly difficult is losing a loved one or losing your job, and for the case of people, as you say, people at Naughty Dog, that is their job. So that is going to be in a difficult time. But to us, we're just gamers, we're just consumers. We're playing an entertainment product. Like, I think we can deal with it.
I think we couldn't forgive them considering the circumstances that are in.
Yeah.
That bit, a little bit of a slip.
And Neil Druckmann shared a similar sort of thing, saying, heartbroken for the team, heartbroken for our fans. We're still incredibly excited to get the game into your hands, and that's kind of all he's really said on the matter. But allegedly, now all of this is alleged, but it was supposed to have come from a disgruntled employee, and it's apparently all to do with a payment dispute. Now, there's just a rumor. We don't have any actual proof of that, but it sounds plausible to me. It's the kind of thing that happens generally when leaks happen. It's because someone's got pissed off and has been like, right, here you go, here's everything.
I guess it's the most likely. I don't see anyone at the studio wanting to commit curious suicide by leaking this and hamper their own, the business that you work for currently. So it makes sense. It makes most sense that this would be a disgruntled ex-employee, because we've heard of it in the past. These things happen. So obviously he's got a bit of a bugbear with this company. If it's around funds and stuff, we've heard all the stories in the past around the working conditions at Naughty Dog. Jason Schreyer did the article about the crunch that happens, and it's a notoriously difficult company to work for, apparently. So it kind of all fits in place in terms of that narrative.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out that the payment dispute doesn't actually mean anything, because it can go either way. It could certainly be that it's Naughty Dog withholding funds or not paying the contracted amount or anything, which would be really, really bad and, illegal. And there's been sort of a precedent with that, because there was an ex-animator who they were withholding his final paycheck, and then he said, you legally can't do that, and was going to get the law involved, and then obviously they paid out. But it could also be the other way, and it could be the developer essentially holding the game to ransom and being like, pay me more, or else I'll release everything, and then they didn't pay him more. So he did release everything, or he released everything anyway. So it's not as cut and dry. A lot of people are in the comment sections and stuff, which again, try and avoid them if you can, because there are spoilers everywhere. A lot of people in comment sections are just saying, oh, well, you should have just paid him right. But it's like, well, you don't know the whole story. It's certainly possible that is the case, but you don't know for sure.
No, exactly. And I think there is a lot of speculation surrounding this story now, and it's difficult to get the information without spoiling it, which is why we're a bit. We could do a lot of research, but then end up spoiling the whole game for ourselves. But we can only comment on the information that we've got at hand right now. So there you go. That's the short and the curlies of it.
Yeah,
is
pretty
that an
much.
expression?
If this was from a developer and things really are that bad at Naughty Dog, is that singular developer right to do this? Are they right to express their disgruntlement, I guess, by leaking all this? My personal feelings are that this accomplishes absolutely nothing in terms of if you're wanting to send a message, right? So Naughty Dog will lose some sales, but realistically it's not going to be that much of a hit. A lot of people will say they don't like the look at the game based on the different cutscenes or ending or spoilery things that happen. They don't agree with certain character decisions, whatever. But totally in your right to choose that and not go ahead with that. But I don't feel like that's going to be that much of a significant financial hit. What it does hit is fans, but this person probably doesn't really care about that. They're pissed off. We get it. But I think arguably the worst thing is that it hurts the developers themselves, other people, their colleagues, their peers, people who they will have probably been working with for a significant amount of time. These games take a long, long time to make, although they do have a very, very high turnover of staff, so perhaps he's not been there that long. But anyway, it hurts the working Joe over at Naughty Dog. It'll send a bit of a message to the Naughty Dog management. They're the ones who really need to hear it, because they're the ones dealing with behind all the crunch problems and all that sort of stuff. But this just fucks up all of the hard work the regular people have done. And I think Jason Schreier tweeted it, and I thought he made a really good point that a lot of people didn't really seem to grasp the nuance of, was that you can hate crunch at your workplace and hate everything that all the toxicity and all that, but still want your game to do well as an artistic thing, because you've worked hard on it. You don't like the way you've been working, but at least once it comes out and it does well, it validates it a bit more, and at least it's not all for nothing.
I mean, I don't get that it's necessarily going to hurt them so much, though. I mean, I think if you think that a week after the game launches, everybody knows this stuff anyway. Even a couple of days after the game launches, everybody knows this stuff anyway, right? So the only sales that they're losing possibly is the ones who would have bought it day one just to experience the story, right? Everyone else, how many games do you avoid buying just because you know the story? Very few. There's old games that you can replay, because you already know the story for those. There's Final Fantasy VII Remake, for example. You already know what happens in that, but you're buying it because you want the experience.
Exactly.
So I don't feel like, everyone's saying, oh, the developers are hurt, oh, Naughty Dog's going to be hurt. They're going to do all right. Nobody's going to lose their jobs. They're going to still make a shitload of money. This is The Last of Us 2 we're talking about here. So, I mean, all this kind of melodrama around this, I think, like, you know, they're a big they're a big corporation.
Yeah.
They're going to be all right. I mean, don't feel too badly for them.
Oh, no, by hurt, I purely mean, at the developer level, I purely mean that they're hurt feelings. Financially.
Yeah, exactly. And they'll get over that. They'll get over that. It's not something that's going to last.
Like, it's not going to ruin their career or anything, but that's my point, is that it's a huge dick move to those people who you should be friends with because you've been working with them for so long.
That's true. In terms of financial impact, probably very little. In terms of like artistic, you creating something and wanting someone to experience it in a certain way. Yeah, some people are going to be have a different experience to what they would have done. It's no big deal at the end of the day. And talking to Jason Schreyer, I bring up one of his tweets, right? And he tweeted the following: just catching up on this Naughty Dog story, and man, no matter how angry you are about your workplace conditions or your pay or whatever else, leaking your whole game just hurts the other people who were in the trenches with you. So many better ways to channel that rage. And talking about the impact that it might have, well, it does kind of put Naughty Dog in the spotlight again if his motivations for doing this were the working conditions or the pay and stuff like that. Yeah. So it does kind of achieve that aim that to bring light to the Naughty Dog's to the working conditions or whatever. And so he is kind of achieving something there. So I would dispute people who say it doesn't do anything for them. And there's another thing that bugs me about Jason Schreier's comments as well. It's the fact that he's notorious for leaking information about games, right? We're talking about Fallout 4. The fact that he leaked in 2013, the fact that actually existed, that it was set in Boston, and also some of the intro dialogue as well, that was leaked in a Kotaku article written by Jason Schreier. And there were other leaks as well. The Assassin's Creed that was set in Victorian London, that was Syndicate, I think. Yeah. And then there was there was various other leaks that Jason Schreier has published as a professional reporter. Now, these leaks are slightly different because in his own terms, he says it's the whole game. And I don't know if the whole story might have been leaked for all we know. But how is that any different? It's still a leak, right? And it still hurts the game's impact. It still hurts the company to a certain extent. So isn't that just hypocrisy from Jason Schreier?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a totally valid complaint. And I do agree with his tweet because I don't like leaks altogether, whether it's from him or, a random developer trying to get his own back. But you are right that he is being hypocritical here. But I think it's funny when he's like, oh, there are so many other ways, like coming to talk to me at my new job over at Bloomberg type deal. Yeah, I thought that was funny.
So self-serving.
But I still don't really think this accomplishes that much, because Naughty Dog will get the shit thrown out of them by a lot of people, a lot of fans, and a lot of people like, okay, this guy did this because working conditions are so bad. Even if Naughty Dog get a lot of heat for it, people will just get over it. Like by the end of next week or whatever, people won't really care about Naughty Dog that much anymore, because the next new thing will be in the news and they won't need to force a change. Articles like Schreier's article about crunch and whatnot, that's stuff is more likely to force a change than, at least in my opinion, smearing shit all over the game by leaking it early.
Well, exactly, and I think that's a good point, because one of Jason Schreier's last articles for Kotaku before he left was the fact, shining light on Naughty Dog and how the culture is beginning to change after the whole thing blew up about the working conditions there in that article that he wrote a couple of years ago. So, whether that article was the catalyst for this change is debatable, but the fact remains that, things were beginning to change at Naughty Dog according to Jason Schreier. His article may have had an impact. How much of an impact this has, again, it's insurmountable, inaccountable, what's the word? You could do so. Quantifiable, that's the word. You just don't know. You don't know whether this will shake the higher ups at Naughty Dog, whether they rethink their strategy with regard to how they produce games and how they try and keep this such a secret, the story and stuff like that. Because Last of Us Part 2 is a narrative-based game, and a lot of weight of the story and the experience, especially in the original one, is in the narrative, is in the story, and that being leaked, it's like, I don't know, it's a disaster for them.
Yeah, and if this guy's motives are true and this is what it is a disgruntled employee, maybe that does indicate that things really are that bad, that he has been driven to such a point where he feels like this is the only way to get an answer. Maybe things on the inside that we obviously can't see are much worse than we thought, because my reading from Jason Schreier's article was that, yeah, it was bad, but by comparison to a lot of them, it wasn't half as bad as some of the other horror stories you've heard, and that the angle seemed to to very much be that it is optional. It's perhaps expected, but if you want to go home, you can. At least that was my reading from it. A lot of people didn't see it that way, which is fine. But perhaps things really are that bad on the ground in the Naughty Dog studio.
Yeah, and that's the fact you've got to remember, is that maybe he's justified. I mean, we don't know the conditions, right? Maybe the leaker is justified in doing this based on the experience that they've had. I mean, you don't know how bad it's been, but again, it's still speculation and we don't know. So, it's kind of all in the air.
Similar to, like, if you take a domestic violence lawsuit or something. Say the woman kills the husband or something. Is it her fault because she's the one who pulled the trigger, or is it his fault because he abused the shit out of her and drove her to that point? So it's a similar thing here with if you take Naughty Dog to play the abuser in this, this narrative, which we don't know if is true, whatever. So if Naughty Dog's the abuser and this developer is the victim, is the developer at fault for leaking it, or is it Naughty Dog's fault for pushing them to the edge? And then there's the case of some people say that they won't be buying the game because of the leak and certain things that crop up in it, story choices that they don't agree with. I don't know the spoilers, but certain political leanings I would gather, because this game was already quite political, and I think if people are surprised by that surprises me. Why would you? It's already been going down that rabbit hole for a while now. You're well within your rights to not buy the game if you don't like the look of the story beats, whatever. But I would urge you to remember that context is everything. Jumping to the end, it's like reading the last page of a book before you buy it. Some people actually do that, which I think is a little odd. But like, honestly, I was talking to my girlfriend about it, so people do it. Jumping to the ending without having taken that journey is not the same. So I would urge people to think of the context and before making a snap judgment, wait for things like reviews, something more in-depth where they've had hands-on with the actual game in its entirety, so therefore the entire context, to actually give an impression of what it's like.
Oh, that's definitely a good point. And I think that if the game falls apart just because of the story and the ending, and it's not going to be a good experience because of that, then it was never a good game to begin with. If that's the only thing holding the game together to be a good game, it was always going to be a disaster for the company. If the game is itself an awesome game to play and to experience on the journey rather than the ending, then that's all that they should care about. They should, if they've made a good product, that's all that they should care about. They shouldn't worry about the ending being spoiled for a few handful of people who have gone out and searched or happened across these spoilers, because I'll tell you what, in a couple of weeks nobody's going to care. It's going to blown under the carpet. The spoilers going to be gone. All right, they're going to be there if you want to go and find them, but hardly anyone's going to get spoiled after this first week or two.
And Sony are just going to sue the shit out of this guy. Well, I would assume so anyway, because they have every legal right to, because he's breaching NDAs and stuff. They can bury him in a huge lawsuit. Sony's a massive corporation, and even if they don't win that lawsuit or don't get all the money, this guy's never going to work in the industry, or at least at this level, ever again, realistically.
So there you have it. Are you one of the people who are going to be seeking out these spoilers, or are you going to be keeping your head down and just want to finish the game in your own speed? Do you think they should be releasing a trailer around about now? Obviously, leave all your thoughts down in the comments below. If you watched this far and you enjoy the content, head over to patreon.com/prettygoodgaming and support the content. You will get early access to the podcast as well as some awesome other perks. So that's it for today's discussion. On behalf of Henry and myself, we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.